Well, hello, friends. Trying something different today. I'm taking a car to work, and I thought I could record a little video talking about something. So, I've been asked this question many times now. How do I stay motivated to work on Serenity? And from people who are interested in doing OS development on their own, um, on starting an operating system from scratch, that type of thing. And it's really, of course, like this personal thing. Motivation is different for everyone, I think, but I'm not here to explain um, my genius level thoughts about motivation, but rather give you some practical advice. So the thing that I think Serenity did differently than basically 99% of hobbyist operating systems is that I did not start with a bootloader or a kernel. So let me tell you what I did instead. So the first three things that I wrote for Serenity were an ELF binary loader, an ext2 file system browser, and a GUI library or GUI toolkit, whatever you want to call it. And these were like three standalone programs that ran on my Linux machine. They did not have any kind of operating system code in them. It was all just using the available C programming facilities of Linux to do these things. And it was almost like when I started on these things, I didn't know, at least not consciously, that I was going to make an operating system. These were just things that sort of interested me separately, and I worked on them basically in parallel, although like sort of, well, not exactly in parallel, but I did do it all within 1 month. So it was at the end of that when they all started feeling sort of complete-ish, or they certainly had many bugs, but like it got to the point where like, okay, this thing kind of works. If this was just a silly hack, then now it's time to find something else silly to hack on. But it got to the point where I had these three components, and I realized that if I just add a kernel here, then I have potentially pretty mature hobby OS. And I see so many projects on GitHub and elsewhere where someone started on a bootloader. Maybe he didn't even make it farther than that, or someone started and managed to get into C code, and then wrote like a little VGA driver or whatever. Moving the cursor around, doing the line breaks correctly. Maybe he did scrolling, and then sort of gave up on it. And I think that you can avoid that whole thing because there's a certain fatigue that sets in when you do that type of really unrewarding development, because that early kernel development before you get really comfortable in that environment, and before you're able to get some big stuff happening in your kernel, it's really unrewarding because you're constantly just beating your head against like a virtual machine usually nowadays, and it just doesn't do shit, and you're just staring at a black screen, or like if you're lucky, a big screen full of garbage, right? And it takes a while before you get out of that stage, and I think that totally kills a lot of potential projects, because it just drains your motivation dealing with that shit. So my advice to everyone interested in developing operating systems is don't start with the kernel. Okay, you can do a kernel later once you have a whole bunch of other stuff that you think would make nice components of an operating system. Freaking hay fever. Okay, sorry, I had to sneeze 1,000 times. I'm back. Okay, so something else that I often see with operating system like really early stage development, is that people find these tutorials and then they cling on to them for dear life and sort of get stuck in this one way of doing things. And I think that that's not great. Of course, it's really good to have a tutorial kickstart you and like get you going. But I think it's really important whenever you are developing following a tutorial that you sort of pick at the seams of it and like take it apart and put it back together and really like throw it around a lot, because that will teach you how that thing actually works. And I think, for instance, um, trying to do or what was I thinking? Oh yeah, right. So another piece of advice sort of related to this that I would also give everyone interested in this type of stuff is try to do it yourself before you hit up the tutorial, before you hit up a wiki or like the OS Dev website or whatever. That always try to build it yourself, however crappy it gets. Start doing it yourself, because when you try to build something yourself, even if you screw it up, when you eventually let it go and go and look at how someone else did it, or go and look at a tutorial or whatever, having that experience of trying to build it yourself is extremely valuable in being able to understand how a successful solution actually works. Because when you try to do something yourself, then you will smash up against all of the various roadblocks and problems, at least the like the early initial big ones, right? Whereas if you're just following a tutorial, then you very often you end up not knowing what the big issues would have been for someone trying to do this, and it's invaluable. So this is not the most structured talk I've never ever recorded in the car before, and I guess this is actually basically my first video without the aid of my computer. So these were just some thoughts I had about people asking about starting OS development and staying motivated. So of course I'm recording this because so many people have asked me this recently, but that's not to say that you shouldn't keep asking me questions. Please do. It is very interesting to hear from so many people about what kind of struggles they face in this world. And I really do think that had I not developed Serenity the way that I did, by not starting with a kernel, or by not trying to build everything myself at first before looking up how someone else did it, I really don't think I would have made it as far as I have. And I really don't think I would have been very motivated at this point. I would probably have given up a long time ago if I had spent the first month just messing around with the kernel, trying to get it to print stuff on screen. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say about that. So thank you for hanging out with me on the commute, and I will see you next time.